I'll start off by saying my name is Mabel Abraham. I love to be categorized as one of the younger people because I have now been out more years than I'd like to think, and the pressures of tenure feel very real, so I'm not feeling like the PhD students that I'm sharing the stage with today. But I'm going to be sharing research with you that's on gender wage inequality, and this work is in collaboration with Tristan Botello, who will be in the second half of the panelists, who also happens to be my brother, as a fun side fact. Okay, so when we talk about gender wage inequality, it's no surprise to anyone in this room that women generally earn less than men. And it's sort of interesting because when we look at the estimates for the size of that gap, they vary drastically. So essentially, depending how the models are specified, we see gaps ranging from 70-some cents on the dollar to 90-some cents on the dollar. But the takeaway is women generally earn less than men. And scholars have spent a great deal of attention and time trying to figure out why. And when we think about the explanations that have dominated this space, they fall into two categories. The first is men and women just do different types of work. So because women are in jobs that pay less or are lower status, they earn less. The second category of explanations has to do with human capital. So things like women having less experience, fewer years of education. So because those are things that are rewarded in the workplace, they make less money. The interesting component here is when we account for these differences, essentially compare men and women who are more similar, who are in the same types of jobs, even working in the same companies, we still see a discrepancy with women earning less, despite accounting for all of these things. So in this paper, what we wanted to understand is the piece that feels missing is that gender is also a source of status. So we're lucky enough to have Cecilia and Shelley in the audience today, and they've told us over many, many years of research that status is ascribed to gender, whereby men are higher status than women. So there are a whole bunch of different inferences and assumptions that we make when we're assessing people, that we make assumptions that women are going to be lesser than on different dimensions, like their contributions in the workplace. So when we think about compensation, it's very plausible that those same inferences are coming into play, leading women to earn less, even when they're ostensibly very similar to men. What we wanted to ask in this study is if gender is a source of status, how does the presence of other types of status that are objectively more relevant to organizations, specifically educational status, shape that pay inequality? The other thing we realized in looking at the literature is that the focus has predominantly been on salary or base pay. So a lot of these estimates are just based on how much more or less do women make vis-a-vis men in terms of salary. But there's a whole lot of reason to expect that the discrepancies are going to be just as prominent or even more prominent in bonuses. These are more subjective, and we have the narrative of meritocracy. So we can say, women earn less in bonuses because they're not contributing as much, and it's really hard to observe this, so it's justified in some way. So in this study, we wanted to ask this question, specifically, how does educational status shape gender wage inequality in terms of these two different components of pay? So to do this, we are relying on some data that gives us a few very specific benefits or advantages for answering this question. So we have data from this platform called Transparent Careers, where early career professionals are inputting details about their different jobs that they've held, their work histories. And they're also inputting information about themselves. So we have an opportunity to look at both salary and bonuses for people for whom we can observe gender, and very importantly for our research question, the educational status, the places that they went to school for undergraduate degrees. And specifically, the theory that we came in with and what we wanted to explore in this research is, does attaining a high level of educational status reap the same benefits for men and women? Or is it the case, which was our prior, is it the case that the bar that men and women need to cross to trigger those high status benefits is different? Said differently, if we consider all top 25 universities to be high-status schools, is it the case that only men get benefits for graduating from those institutions, but women need something more? They essentially need to graduate from the most elite schools among the set. And that's why we operationalize educational status in this way. We look at 11 to 25, and then the most elite, the top 10 schools. And what this lets us do, what this data set lets us do, is essentially account for all of the things that we've observed or we've heard matter: human capital, the kinds of jobs people hold, and educational status. And when we look at these outcomes in terms of salary, we essentially see when we make these comparisons of very similar men and women, the gap virtually closes. So at every level of educational status, women earn just about as much as men, when we compare men and women again in the same jobs with the same human capital. The story is a bit different when we think about bonuses. So I want to draw your attention, because I have like 30 seconds, to the middle set of bars here. We see essentially that men are getting a reward or a premium when they graduate from schools ranked 11 to 25. But for women, they do no better than their counterparts who don't have an affiliation with the high status school. It takes them graduating from a top 10 school, the set of results all the way to the right, for that gap to close again. So what does this translate to? It basically tells us that gender is so pervasive and the status beliefs associated with gender are so pervasive that it doesn't render gender no longer useful when we have educational status. Instead, we interpret educational status through a gendered lens. So with that, thank you very much.